Mm.
Starting. Okay, here we go. Hello, everyone, and welcome to Witch Bitch, where we talk the real tea. And today we have Kristy Trede on once again.
Hello,
Always,
hello.
I just get so excited when you're on the show because, as I said in our posts, just I always walk away feeling like I have so many little treasures of knowledge to carry me throughout life. You know that you just give so many gifts in your
Mm.
energy, and you just have to be you for us to receive all we need to. And I don't know. That's what I strive to be in a person is just by being the best version of myself and allowing people to receive from that. So,
Yeah,
and you do it very well. So, yeah,
thank you.
I'm really
Thank
excited
you.
to be talking with you again. So when I was thinking of a topic for today, I always link it back to my life because I'm selfish.
That's the way to
Because,
be. Number one rule in self-care is be selfish.
yeah. Because it's topics that relate to my life currently and
Mm.
things that I want to learn and share also about my perspective on as well. And something looking into my life at the moment that I'm struggling with is finding my own spirituality, my own path, my
Mm.
own trusting my own beliefs over, the crowded shouting of
Mhm.
like the spiritual community of believe this and believe that
Mhm.
this is right and this is wrong and it very much reminds me of diet culture in a way. Like there's just so much
Totally.
information out there, and I thought no one better to talk about this than you because you're literally teaching people
This is
how.
what I teach.
Yeah,
I mean, I teach people how to tap into their psychic abilities, but ultimately, it's such, the end result is leaning into trusting,
yeah,
that intuitive flow that comes through. And it's usually the hardest thing for people to lean into. It's the biggest hurdle. If I ask everyone in a room, 9 out of 10 people will say, I don't know how to trust the message. When we relate that back to life, how many times do we not trust our decisions and our choices? So, the,
yeah.
the whole thing to me, like when I go direct to source, which is source energy, spirit guides, God, the universe, whatever you want to call it, we literally are going to the source, and when we start working there, it ripple effects out into everyday life. So when we start trusting that intuitive flow, the way we receive, like when we actually understand how we're receiving, and we can discern the difference between the egoic mind and that intuitive flow, and we reach that level of trusting that coming through without even thinking about it, you start just trusting all your choices and decisions in life, which is ultimately the end goal.
Kristy, I struggle a little bit with the voices
Mm.
because I think it's got a lot to do with the way I grew up and like the
Mm-hmm.
I relied so heavily
Mm.
on my egoic voice
Mm,
to
Yeah.
keep me safe when I was
yeah.
growing up.
Yeah.
And I have these I have these like intuitions that come, but
Yeah.
they're so left of field. They're so not who I am as a
Yeah.
person sometimes.
Like good intuition or bad intuition?
I
Fearful
no,
or
they're not. I don't think they're good or bad. Like there will be,
They'll be scary
yeah,
sometimes.
they're
yeah.
scary. Like I've over the years I've built up a set of beliefs and ways of living my life
Mm.
based on the mistakes of my parents, mistakes of
So your inner child is
elders
running your
from the
world.
past. Hey, what was that?
Your inner child is running your world.
Yes, so yes, probably.
Yeah, because
So these,
we're programmed from childhood. So
yes,
the filtering system, the 2 million bits of information that come to us at any one time gets sent, we don't receive all that. We receive 186 bits of that information. And that's because it runs through our filter system, which is our programming, which happens in childhood. So our beliefs, our values, our experiences, and then we take from that what we see. That's our reality, right? But we actually can change that. So we can't change our subconscious mind, but we can change our conscious thoughts, which means when we start looking and assessing our values and our beliefs, when we start doing shadow work, which is like in Ascension, I've got a 6-week program called Ascension, and we work with week 4, we do an integration of the masculine and feminine. So we actually do a healing of the mother-father wound inside of us to empower, like this empowered part of us to sort of step forward. And the following week we do an inner child healing, which is, and the reason we do that after that is because we then have an integrated masculine and feminine, king and queen inside of us that is ready and capable of taking the keys, and we're creating a safe space for that inner child to hand the keys over. The inner child is really designed to bring out joy and happiness in our life, the fun parts, but often it's the inner child that's running the places that no child has a place to be: our sex life, our relationships, money, finances, like all of these other things that children shouldn't be running. And that's based on maybe conversations we've overheard, programming and thoughts and beliefs from our parents in childhood, from like it's really like ingrained in us. And often these thoughts that I hear, sort of what you're saying here, that stuff that's coming through from that space was from then, right?
Yeah.
So
their intuition is coming through and saying, in this place, at this point in time, this is what you've got to do.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
But it's the complete opposite of what I would do.
Yeah, right. That's right. And it sounds like you have a way of just like you can discern the difference because it's so vastly opposite.
Yeah. It's
to
so not
what
me.
that is. Yeah.
It's so not who I am as a person. Like it's risky. It's it's so left of field. It's not like doesn't come from my logic, from the logical way that my brain.
Yeah.
Mum is not a risk taker, is what
No.
she's trying to say.
No.
Yeah.
I'm not.
No, you are.
I'm not. No, I'm not a risk taker, particularly when it comes to family and my kids and stuff like that.
Yeah.
So when the intuition comes, I freak out, right? Because I know it's trying to tell me to do this thing.
Yeah.
And then I'm in this position where I'm going, holy crap.
Do I go against like everything?
My brain and my ego and my programming tries to unpick everything about what the intuition is telling me to make it in a way like to digest.
So that's the ego that's coming in, right?
Yes.
Yeah. So
it's strong.
Yeah, it is.
Strong.
It is. Do you know why? Because the
really
ego
doesn't want to do it.
No,
my ego
and
does not want to know.
No, because you're doing something that's against your values or your programmed, maybe not your values and beliefs, but your programmed values and beliefs, which is the underlying the subconscious.
Yeah.
And the ego is like this prehistoric part of our brain that has never evolved. Like the rest of us have evolved, except for this one part of our brain. It's a reptilian part of our brain. So it has one job, and that's to keep you safe, right? It literally asks 2 questions every single time you have to make a choice. Am I going to live or am I going to die? Yeah. And if it does not know what the outcome's going to be if you're doing the thing that you've never done before, if you've never actually felt or experienced that, it's going to go, can I swear on this show?
Yeah, of course.
It's going to say, get the fuck out of here. And it's going to throw everything at you. And because you're starting to hear that, I bet now when you hear that, I reckon when you first had that intuitive thought and you didn't trust it and didn't do anything with it, the ego wasn't so loud. It was like, yeah, no, we're not doing that. And you go, okay.
Oh, 100%.
Right? And now you're like, I think this is actually coming from spirit, or this is like my, the intuition and psychic, like it all comes from source energy. It's all comes from this place that we can't make sense of, right? It's not a part of inside of us. It's something that is flowing into us. We're actually connected to it, but it's not part of the human construct, so to speak.
Yeah.
It's part of our energetic connection. And the more you've started to trust that intuition, that egoic voice has gotten really loud, and it's like, it's going to throw all the fear at the world. Like, it's going to make up stories and all the things that it knows that you've responded to in the past. It's going to blow that like way out of proportion to try and pull you back. And one thing that I teach people is like the visualization technique of, if there's something that you really want to do and create, what you can do is like just sort of visualize this thing in the future, like 5 or 10 years down the track. Now, our subconscious and unconscious mind cannot tell the difference between reality and make-believe.
Right.
It's like when we have a trauma response, like if someone's experienced trauma in the past, and like right now they go into a trauma response, they're like actually reliving the experience. They're not actually reliving it. They are in their mind, but their body doesn't discern the difference between it actually not like happening right now or, that it was in the past. So when you can project into the future, that thing that you want or desire, the thing that intuitive flow that's coming through for you to create, and you see yourself as having that thing already done, already achieved, like living a life as though it's done and dusted, right? It now exists in your reality. And you bring in the 5 senses. What do I see right now? So you do this with your eyes closed. What do I see right now? Look around you. Like, even like, where are you living? What are you doing? Like in that moment that you're sort of reflecting on all the things that got you to this point. What can you see? What can you hear? Like, listen for the big sounds. Are they, conversations? Is there TV on? Is there music? Are you in the forest, at the beach, wherever it is? What are the big sounds and the subtle sounds? And then what can you smell? What can I smell right now? What can I reach out and touch? So bringing in all the senses. What do I feel inside my body? Like, the sensations that are flowing through us, the energy, the emotion. And what can I taste in my mouth? And the tasting bit is actually one of the sense. And if you can't imagine tasting anything, just like literally, what am I tasting in my mouth right now? Is it the toothpaste I've just brushed my teeth? Is it the coffee I've just drunk? Like, and then like I've just had a coffee. So I just imagine a coffee like maybe in my hand, and I feel the warmth of that coffee. Have a sip. Yeah, I can taste that now. That the taste like is the key to locking that in as though it's done. So if you keep using this visualization technique like on a regular basis, you actually start to quieten the ego, because what your ego is actually, we survived this, right?
Yeah, right.
So the voices start to, so we're starting to reprogram those neural pathways and that experience inside of our body. So that's something that I love doing with my clients, just to help them move past some of their like really rock solid fears.
Yeah, because when the ego brings all of that stuff to me, all of that stuff that you're talking about, it starts to rise up in my body, in the fear side of things, not in the oh, we're past it and we're okay side of things. It's in the moment, and the fear is, okay, this is what could potentially, it's listing, it's got a laundry list.
It's throwing you into the future, into the story that hasn't even so when that happens, the one thing have you read Byron Katie's book, Loving What Is?
Oh no.
Oh my God, you need to get that book. Like, you and I started our journey together, right? Yes. And one thing that I really couldn't get my head around was the projections, right? Because there was still this part of me that was like, but he or she, like, and it's not about them. And the one thing I think when it comes to projections is we're not told that sometimes people do shitty things, and it's actually not about the shitty thing. It's just about that projection. But it took me years. I just like kept trying to analyze it and couldn't get my head around it. And when I read this book, actually, I listened on Audible. I've listened to it about 10 times. I love her book, and her stage shows are all recorded. I realized what projections were all about, like that they just landed in a different way inside of me. And when I listened to her stage shows of real people getting up on stage doing the work, like to turn around and have a look at what was going on inside of them. There was a woman that had been raped. There was a another woman that the son was a drug addict. There was someone that had been in jail for something that they didn't do. I can't remember. There was like really extreme things of people getting up on stage. But listening to them, I was like, at start, I was like, oh my God, how is she going to turn this around? Because my head was still like in blame, like there's blame, right? And when she turned it around so eloquently and beautifully, I was like, oh my God, it just gave me full permission to trust the process, right? To just actually allow myself to be open to the process, to trust what was coming in. So Byron Katie, Loving What Is, absolutely great book. And if you get an Audible, you see those shows. But going back to the ego mind, that's the ego wanting to make sense of it, right?
Yes.
We're not blaming ourselves. This is their fault, right? It keeps us small, because keeping us small serves us. It keeps us safe, because when we're growing, and again, this comes back to trust and trusting the process, that fear state. When we're fearing something, we're really on the verge of leaning into evolving and like jumping into a space that's unknown, but we're ready to evolve. It's like, the lobster cracking out of its shell, or the butterfly coming out of the the chrysalis, like actually having to struggle to get out. That's the tough bit, right?
Yeah.
That's the fear state in you, like that struggle coming out of the cocoon. The fear state for you is that, right?
Yeah.
And when we trust the process and go, actually, I can feel this fear and do it anyway, and lean into it and lean through it, it all comes down to trust.
Yeah.
It all comes down to trust.
Very, so true. I experienced this when I went to Byron when I moved.
Yeah.
Because it was the first time that I was doing something completely on my own, and that Mum didn't fully
understand.
Yeah, at the time.
No, that is. I'm going to defend myself.
Okay.
I knew.
You don't have to defend yourself.
I knew that Juliet was doing something brilliant for herself.
Yeah.
It wasn't. It was what I found most difficult about it was the speed with which it happened. It was like one week we were just going along our lives like normally.
Yeah.
Next week she was moving, and then the week after she was gone.
Yeah. Amazing.
Yeah. So it was like this.
Yeah. Are you slow in making decisions and choices with big? Yeah.
Yeah.
So
I had no time to digest what was happening.
Yeah.
Until she was gone. She was out of the house.
And Mum had a letting go period as well. That was like my baby girl's been ripped away from me, which is probably more what was like actually lying underneath there. Because you guys have like been, I've watched Juliet ever since she was like, I don't know how long we were in the entourage together.
She was 11.
11.
She's 19 now.
Yeah. And I just watched this beautiful relationship between both of you. Oh my God, really? Happy birthday for tomorrow. You're a Pisces baby.
Yes. Pisces. So, sorry, what I was saying was it was the first time I was doing something completely on my own.
Yeah.
And probably going against my mum's advice and just going.
Really?
Yeah, because even though you wanted me to go and move, you didn't want me to move then.
No.
And no,
I was
like, I heard that quiver in the voice. No.
So, but I knew that it was the right choice, and it was just a feeling of just, you get it.
Yeah,
everyone
totally.
gets it. So when I got to Byron, there was just so many signs that even though I had to struggle through the fear of like, I don't even know what I'm doing, why on earth am I doing this, like what's happening, and I was breaking out of that cocoon, that fear stage. And once I got to Byron, there was just so much synchronicity that supported me. Like I remember the same day that I moved there, I also had a job trial that I set up before I moved.
Yeah.
So And in the same day that I got the job trial, they told me that I got the job. So in one day, I moved and got a new job.
Yeah.
And then I got the last spot in the campground. So I got to set up my tent in the last spot for the next like few weeks.
Yeah.
Like there was just so much of this sort of thing happening.
Beautiful.
And then when I was feeling like, okay, it's time for me to leave now and go on my next adventure, there was so many things kicking me out.
Yeah, I bet. But this feels like, as you were explaining this, I was like, this is almost like this was your rite of passage into womanhood, right? And, finding your true independence and trusting in the process was a big part of that. Because how many times do we want to make, we're like, okay, I want to do this thing. And you share it with a few people and they're like, oh, and then they project their own fear. Like mum was like projecting a little bit of fear out there onto you.
Yeah.
This goes on through life, right? And then a lot of the time, what I find with people in my programs, the biggest struggle they have is one, trusting their own choices, but also saying yes to themselves and no to others, right?
Yeah.
So they almost sacrifice their own life for the happiness of others.
Yeah.
So what you just did was go, you know what? I am an adult. This is what I want to do. If it is the wrong choice, I'll make a mistake. I'll fail forward. I'll learn from that experience. And I trust that I'll learn from that experience, because we don't learn from not making mistakes. We learn from living life and like expecting ourselves to fail. And when we do fail, standing back up going, what did I do that I could do differently next time, right? And then taking that on with us through life. So I just think it's really admirable and courageous of you that you did that the way that you did.
Thank you. Yeah. It was an incredible, like when you say it was my journey into womanhood, it really was.
Yeah.
There was so much there. Like again, I was in kind of like a hippie commune sort of environment. I mean, it technically wasn't.
It is Byron.
Yeah, it is also Byron.
There's a blend of like, Ritz
either
and hippiness.
or hippie, or both.
Yeah, totally.
So I got a lot of that misinformation or information overload.
Yeah.
I mean, it was really quite a lot. And you know what? It actually never came from anyone in my close circle of friends. It was usually outside of the hostel. But it was just an interesting experience, and I had to trust myself. I had to put myself first.
Yeah.
And I had to learn like how to, be self-sufficient basically.
Yeah.
And it was very like, I don't know, it was just the most incredible thing in my life. It set me up for, now I know I can live anywhere basically.
Totally.
Because I lived in a tent for 3 months, so I can live anywhere.
Yeah, you can travel the world and go live in ashrams. Like they're clean, they've got organic food and filtered water, and it's cheap living. And
I want to do ashrams. Actually, that's been on my list. Maybe that's a sign. Synchronicity right there. Yeah,
beautiful. We spent we stayed in 2 ashrams in India. One up in the Himalayas, actually near McLeod Gunj in a place called Dharamsala. And I don't know if I said that right, but it sounds right in my head. And we could drink the water there. Like they have this massive filtration system. They grew their own food. They like picked like the food to eat before they, like that same day. I used to watch the women outside like cleaning and trimming all the vegetables for the chefs in the kitchen. And the same down in Delhi, actually, apart from the pollution, the air pollution when we were there, it was really, I mean, it's bad anyway, but it was like 10 times as bad. We had to leave early, but again, we could drink the water and they had their own food, and I never got sick there.
Wow.
Like I hear all these stories about people getting sick in India, and we stay in ashrams, and it's the only place. I traveled through Southeast Asia as well during that time, and we were sick quite often there. But yeah, ashrams. There you go.
That's a good idea.
Yeah.
I wonder if there's any. There might actually be some up in Cairns. You never know.
Maybe there's some in. There's some in. Yeah, I think there is. There's one outside of. I think there's one near Mullum. Is it a Buddhist one? There's one on the Sunshine Coast, I think. There'd definitely be something in Cairns, Bali. They're all over the world.
Yeah. Wow.
All over the world.
There's that one that does the silent.
That's an ashram?
No.
I don't know if it's an ashram, but...
That scares the fuck out of me, sorry. Being silent for 10 days, I'm like, I can't think of anything worse.
There's one in the Blue Mountains.
Being with my own thoughts for 10 days.
Yeah, and I've been told by a very reliable source that it's life-changing. It's so life-changing.
Everyone says that.
Yeah, it's like you go up a level, like, pretty quick.
You level up.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Your face.
I'm like a hard no.
Yeah, your face just.
Maybe one day, but I'm a hard no.
I got it from your expression.
Maybe one day. Maybe one day.
I think what would get me is the fact that everyone else is also silent. So it's just silence everywhere.
That's what I mean. Like you're literally with your own thoughts and nothing else for 10 days.
Oh, yeah.
The worst part about it for me would be I'd want to, because I observe things, especially if I'm in a new environment.
Yeah.
And being able to talk to somebody about what I'm observing, like sharing it with somebody and going, oh, did you see that? And what was going on there? And, that sort of thing.
There's none of that.
The hardest for me.
Yeah. I'm, do you guys know about human design?
Yes.
So I'm a self-projected projector. So everything that's in my head doesn't make sense until I speak it most of the time.
Yeah, right.
So I'll have, in my previous businesses, I would call meetings and I would be the only one talking at the end. I'm like, okay, right, now I understand what we've got to do. And they're like, do you even need us? I'm like, yes, you serve a very important role. Sitting there, but like literally I need people to sit there and be sounding boards. But for me, when I speak it, that's when it's like I'm hearing it for the first time and I'll be answering my questions as I'm speaking.
Yeah.
So
I love that.
Yeah.
So
there's
funny.
none of that in the retreat though.
No.
You're completely that's what I mean. I don't think I could handle being with the messiness of my thoughts for that long.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
Lots of journaling, baby.
That's a good way to I mean, that's what we're talking about, really, isn't it? Like trusting your own boundaries, your own path. Yeah. And if that's not for you, then that's not for you. I'm sure there's been a bunch of people that have done it and was like, I knew this wasn't for me.
I know people that have left because it was so hard, but I also know people that are like go several times, a couple of times a year to these retreats and like swear by them. I think, for me, like I trust that it's not for me right now, but I'm not closed off that it won't be for me at some other point, right? It's not like it is a hard no right now, but it's not a hard no forever. The door's open to visit there, and maybe I will one day, but
could you imagine if you and I went together?
No. we wouldn't have to leave, we'd be asked to leave.
You guys would be like secretly meeting in the bathroom, like
because we would know
that
we were shit at it, and we would just be shit at it together. So bad.
Be like, God, did you see that in the prayer room? Yeah, we'd be terrible.
No, tell me all about it.
Yeah.
Oh.
Yeah. I'm all for meditation. But one of my recent videos was fuck meditation because I think, and this comes back to trust as well. We get told that you have to meditate to listen to your intuitive thoughts and to be with yourself in the mornings and to journal. And, we're taught to quieten our minds. Like, how the fuck do you quieten a busy mind? Like, and then what do you do if it's busy and the thoughts are there? Like, you're just setting yourself up for failure. Like,
yeah, exactly.
And there's so many other better ways to meditate. I'm not saying that you can't meditate that way, and some people operate fine that way. But most of the people that are new to this space, like they're told to meditate, and that's to sit there and be quiet. quieten your mind. Like, but you can go for a walk. Like, leave your phone at home, go for a walk. You know, bring in the five senses as you're walking. What do you see? Like, look at all the colors around you. Listen to the sounds, the big ones and the subtle ones. What can you smell? What do you feel? Can you feel the breeze or the sun on your face? What can you reach out and touch? What can you taste in your mouth? That's a meditation, right? Doing the same with your coffee in the morning. Meditation. We've done dynamic meditations before, the Osho dynamic meditations, like when we went up to Dharamsala, you know, that meditation that we did, the hoo, 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 right? That awesome. One, we had to do that every day for like 10 days. I was like, I got to day 5 and I'm like, I'm not doing that today. And if we didn't go, we would, it's like we got a brownie mark, tick, cross off the list. Yeah. Why weren't you a meditation today? I had a headache.
Bad spiritual person.
Right. Yeah. I'm like, no, my body doesn't want to do that today. There was a lot of resistance when I was there to this. I feel like the second I get told I have to do something, this resistance comes up inside.
Yeah, but isn't that a wonderful way of figuring out who you are and what your limits are and how you operate in the world and all of that stuff?
Yeah. And sometimes I think we need to sort of push through that resistance, and other times we need to listen to it. And going back to what you were saying before, here's another thing about the ego, right? The ego will start to speak to you in ways that you understand, and it will disguise itself. So in the spiritual community, you know what that might look like? I slept in. It must be a sign for me to not do that thing today.
That's me.
Right?
Yep.
I have had a really shit morning. That's a sign. It's definitely a sign I'm not going to do the other thing that I was meant to do today. I feel I'm getting this feeling and this sense from spirit that I shouldn't do this thing today. Let's not go. Right? And this is our ego. Right? Our ego starts to disguise ourselves, because if you've already agreed to do the thing, you're meant to do the thing.
Yeah.
And there's probably, even if you're meant to do the thing and not enjoy it or not like it or fail in it or, experience something not great in it, that's meant to be your experience.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right? So what that is just that resistance coming up. And it's like, sometimes we've got to push through that. Like, I probably should have pushed through that meditation, because that was my agreement. I was just this is the rebel inside of me, right?
Yeah, I agree. And I feel that rebel inside me too. Yeah. I get this, and it started in my adult years, like when a child, you're trying to walk around and the child's had enough and they just sit on the ground.
Yeah.
And they're like, I ain't walking no more. Or like even pets do it sometimes, like a dog, you take the dog for a walk and it just sits down and it's like, I'm done.
You're like,
that's me. I have that in me where I'll be like, okay, I'm done, and I just can't operate in that space anymore.
No.
And it doesn't matter what I say or do to try and get myself going. That's it. I'm just sitting on the ground.
Yeah. That's usually the teenage rebel.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's which actually, when you were speaking before, I wanted to ask, some of those things that go against that intuitive download that goes against your beliefs, like from childhood. I'm curious if some of that is your inner child playing out and the rebellion coming through. Not all of it, but sometimes.
Or
again, sometimes it could be disguised as intuition. So is that like the
reason why I'm saying it's intuition is because of the way it feels.
Okay.
And because it is so out of my, because they're things telling me, like the stuff that's coming through is I would never tell myself that stuff.
Yeah. Okay. And
that's
so
how I feel it's not coming from me.
Yeah. So that stuff that comes through is not fear-based.
No, it's not.
Yeah.
There's no fear around it.
Yeah. Then it's definitely intuition.
It causes fear.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
It comes in as pure information. Just, like this is what you got to do. It's so clear, crystal clear.
Yeah.
And then I start to go, no way. Like, I don't think so.
So the resistance that comes up is the ego, and then if you don't listen to the resistance, that's when the fear comes in. But often, like, people go, how do I discern whether it's intuition or ego that's telling me to do this thing or not do this thing? I was like, straight away, if it's coming from a place of resistance or fear, it's ego.
Yeah.
Because intuition, even if intuition tells you to do something you wouldn't normally do, or let's not, don't do the thing, that is not coming from, like, don't do the thing because.
Yeah, that's the ego.
Yeah.
Oh,
100%. There's story all around it.
Always.
Story all around
Hang on.
Yeah.
There have been so many times where my ego got the better of me then. So many times.
Oh, yeah.
No wonder that I'm, like, not sure how I feel about my intuition, because I'm, like, thinking I'm following it because it says things like that.
Yeah.
And like, oh, you got to, and it doesn't really feel like intuition, but also my intuition isn't like mum's. I can feel it, yes, and it's strong, but also sometimes it can be really subtle.
Yeah.
And so the ego, like he says, it disguises itself. The ego can never replicate the strong, big intuitions.
No.
But it can replicate the small ones for me, because my small intuitions are also very subtle.
Yeah.
And so, like, I'll hear a little voice, like, that says, don't do this because, or do this, when I know, I'm like, I don't know about that, though. But I'm like, oh, well, let's just see where this takes us. And then I'm down a shit road.
Yeah.
But
that makes so much sense.
So this is sort of the other piece, which I was sort of saying before, is that people believe that even though we get intuitive, like, downloads to go in a certain direction, that means it's the right, perfect direction, and life is going to be rosy. But we're not here to live a rosy life all the time. We're here to learn lessons. And sometimes our intuition takes us down a road that ends up being dark, and you're like, oh, that was probably your intuition, because there's something on that path you need to learn.
Yeah.
So I think it's really important that we just trust it's not just trust the intuition, but just trust the path that it's taking us on and the lessons that come with it, whatever presents itself.
Very, very, very true. But I'm talking more like I actually feel in my body, like, not great after that, like, after following that. But also, one thing that I'm learning big time is that, like, me moving to Byron wasn't pretty all the time. Like, it was actually, most of the time it was not pretty. It was really hard. I had to deal with
You lived in a tent for 3 months.
Yeah. I did. And I worked at...
But that wasn't the worst of it.
I worked at a job that, like, treated me like absolute crap, and I was questioning why this was happening, because it was like, this job was so, like, it was so meant to be. Yeah. It was so meant to be. Yeah. I walked up with my resume, and I had been wanting to...
Because it'd gone through everyone else in the town.
Yeah.
That's the sense of it.
It was my first place, like, handing in my resume. I'd like printed off quite a few to go around, and I walked up, and my intuition chose this place too. I was like, oh, out of all the bars, because I worked at a bar, out of all the bars in Byron, this is the one that I actually feel called to. All the other ones I was like, I don't think I would want to do that, but I would want to work here. So I walked up, handed in my resume, and he was like, oh, you've got your alcohol license. Oh, look at this. Oh, cool. When do you want to come in for a trial shift? And I was like, oh, okay, great. Next week. And then next week I came back, and I got the job on the same day as my trial, which was the same day that I moved, as I previously mentioned. Like, it was so meant to be, and I had handed my resume out to other places as well, and I didn't hear anything back from any of the other places. So it was so clear. And then when I tried to get out of this job, I was handing out resumes that, like, throughout working there, and no other place would take me. So it was like, why am I stuck here, man?
So what was your gift? What was the gift from working there?
I think
there was so many.
There was a lot.
There was so many.
The main one, and it actually sounds kind of funny, but it's a big lesson to me, is that Mum wasn't bullshitting my whole childhood, telling me about how the real world has bullies and like I remember Mum. So I
had navigating those not so nice.
Yeah, like I had a bully growing up, and my mum would say, "This is just training you because there's people like her that are even worse all out in the world. This is just practicing dealing with those people."
Yeah.
And I was like, "Yeah, whatever. People are nice. I'm nice, so everyone else is going to be nice."
Yeah.
That childhood thinking, and look, she was right. That's what that job taught me, is that like there's people like this everywhere, and
for no reason.
And it's not it's not a negative like lesson. It's actually a really beautiful lesson because I know that it's out there now, and so I'm not so closed off to that reality. I see it, like seeing the shadow, you know. I didn't want to see the shadow before. I was like,
you took your rose-colored glasses off.
Yeah, and it was a hard thing to see at first, and but I don't know. That was probably one of the main lessons that I learned from it. Other than that, boundaries.
Yeah.
Boundaries.
Well, bullies will bring that out in you.
Yeah. Yeah.
Maybe the bully was such a bully because you lacked the boundaries. So when you're able to put them up, it kind of, we can't control them, but
and the bullying and the experience that she had wasn't triggered by anything that she had done. It was triggered by who they were as people and who she is as a person. And that's a huge lesson too, to know that you can just be who you are, just be in that person's presence and be bullied.
You don't even have to do anything.
You don't have to deserve it. You don't have to do anything.
And this is where we need to let go. This is where it becomes about them. We get to choose to stay in that environment and own that choice, or we get to choose to leave. And
but see, Juliet was faced with that choice, and she tried to leave, and she couldn't get another job. Nothing else was opening for her. So she was forced to stay to survive. And she was forced to stay there for practical reasons and deal with the situation the way it was presented to her. And I think that was a good thing, because what it did in the end was teach her that I can't allow it to be about me. I have to see it for what
because it's like a bully. It's all about them. It's nothing about you.
And you sometimes you have to stand in the face of a bully and know, stand in your power and know, I am not doing anything to deserve this from them.
No.
I'm just being who I am.
You're just being a mirror. Actually, you're both being a mirror for each other during that time. So.
Yeah, so I learned a lot from it. And that was a huge...
And it was hard.
Unpretty side of my life. And I would wake up also with huge amounts of anxiety that I hadn't even faced since high school. I had to get through a lot of that. Intuition, following your intuitive path and your spiritual path is definitely not ever
easy
the way that you think it's going to be. It's not this blissful frolic through the field. And the butterfly. I mean,
there's people out there that do that, and they're not really living true to form.
Well,
they're bypassing it all.
Yeah, this is one thing that
Be happy.
Bring up quickly, because I went, so on my way down from Byron back to Sydney, I was traveling with a friend, and we did a whole road trip. And one of the main places that we stopped was at this huge hippie gathering. And it's called the Rainbow Gathering, if anyone's watching. And this one was, there's it's kind of like ashrams in a way, but they're just gatherings, so they're all over the world. It's not
Woodstock.
One place. And this one was quite a small gathering, and it went on for a month, and it was in the middle of nowhere. When I say nowhere, I mean,
did you say it went on for a month?
Yeah, but you could you didn't have to stay for the whole month. Some people did, but the whole thing, the people who set it up,
I'm done after one night.
Oh, just you wait. I couldn't even stay one night.
Oh,
Like, it was so...
Kristy, you and I like fucking we're like soul sisters, man.
Oh my God.
We end up in this place, right? We had no idea what we were expecting. We just knew it was called the Rainbow Gathering and that it was a bunch of hippies and that they were probably going to be naked. That didn't disappoint.
I was going to say that wouldn't. They're a month, like.
Yeah, it was.
Would have been
crazy. Like,
fun if you like that.
What is it? Stuff. Delusional? Like, it was a bit delusional. I say a bit delusional. It was very.
Yeah, well, there's probably a lot of plant medicine. There's probably a lot of plant medicine.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think plant medicine has its place, right? But I think when even cacao, we can abuse cacao. Like cacao's. Do you know what cacao is? Don't you? Chocolate drink, right? It's very heart opening, and actually, if you drink it on a fasted stomach, if you don't like have anything for like 12 hours, so you have an early dinner the night before, and have it in the morning, it actually, like, I've connected to my cards when I'm doing readings after having cacao, and they're completely different, like completely next level. But I feel like I tap into this because it's heart medicine. I tap into this sense of love, and I noticed that when I had done that and experienced that, I wanted to do it for my readings, and then I was like, hold up, this is not healthy. This is actually an addictive behavior, and I feel like that we can use the word plant medicine and journeys to enable us to escape. And I feel like and I think, maybe there's a place for escaping, but I just want to speak to that here. Because it's not that I'm against it.
No, it was a very important piece, I think, to the conversation.
Well, let's just say there's a lot of that going around, like all the time.
It's escapism.
And this was nothing new to me because I had spent my time in a hippie commune with people. I knew a guy who was taking mushrooms like every single day. Every single day.
Yeah.
So it wasn't anything new to me. I saw it for the past 3 months, but it was like on steroids. Like people. I'll tell a quick side story. This was not when this is just to give some context of like where I was. So this was after I left. I had friends who I met up with later, a couple months later, and they were telling me about this story from the Rainbow Gathering, and it was that there was a woman who was in the gathering that decided she wanted to go swim. She went swimming in the rapids, got stuck, and almost died. The actual commute, like the place where everyone was, is 2.5 hours away from phone reception, at least that I knew of. They had to hike 5 hours into the woods just to get phone reception to call someone to come rescue her. I think they ended up getting her out, but she broke her leg or something. I don't know.
Wow.
So they needed to call emergency services. And so they hike 5 hours to do that. They come back, and then the helicopter is there to come save them. While the helicopter is up in the air saving this woman, there is a gorilla workshop. And so there's all these naked hippies acting as monkeys.
Oh my God.
In the field while
I would pay to see that.
That's what I said. I'm like, I wish I was there. That would have been amazing.
The helicopter coming down would be like
naked being monkeys while there was a helicopter rescuing this poor girl out of the rapids. This is the kind of level we're talking. And it's something in the spiritual community that I saw a lot in my journey so far because of just where my life has taken me, really. Yeah. And
I've never heard of people acting like a gorilla.
Oh, it has.
Well, it was like it's probably getting back to a primal sense of being.
Yeah. Yeah.
Which,
I think these things down at the core of them are beautiful and I'm sure with some enrichment to one's life.
Yeah.
Not
in workshops.
Someone is getting helicoptered out of the rapid almost.
Yeah. I don't think in those events things don't stop. Everything seems to go on around them.
Yeah, it was just very interesting, and so it's something that this frolic through the woods while there's something I see that as a metaphor. Like there is something here to face as like imagine if everyone worked together to help this woman. Like she would have been out, someone would have grabbed their car, would have taken her. Like it would have been before the helicopter came, I think. But instead they're like, oh no, let's do the fun thing. Let's be made to be monkeys. Instead of dealing and facing this thing that needs to be, solved. And I see that so much in the spiritual community that I've been a part of. And it was just
you're saying it's like a form of spiritual bypassing on steroids.
Kind of. And it's just
not dealing with the issues that are right in front of you.
So I don't know, that's what I wanted to speak to, because that was a big thing that I was seeing, and like I was like, hang on, like my what do you call it, my spiritual
so
I don't know if
I can relate this back to the trust too that we're talking about, which is this is something that I hear, and I believe this to be true, but I also believe that we can be gaslit with this part of it as well, which is for instance, if we have a conversation and you get upset and I go, well, they're your feelings, I'm not responsible for them, right? It's just like, well, she did that, I'm not responsible for that, someone else can look after that. Like there's this, and I don't think everyone needed to help, but maybe there was like a group of people that could have helped get her out of there. But I this is that trust, that trust not just in ourselves, but this is the trust that the other person has got it. But I feel like that in itself is true, but it can also be used to gaslight people. It's like I might say something really horrible, and you like really horrible and hurt your feelings. And then I'm like, I'm just not going to take any ownership. That's your feelings. I'm not responsible. I can't make you feel like that. Which is true. But at some point I need to take responsibility.
You don't need to say that though.
For myself and how I impact others.
Everybody has. If in a perfect world, if everybody takes responsibility for their role, for themselves, then those things don't happen.
No, and
because we're all taking responsibility. So if I put my 2 cents into this, you've got your reasoning. If you put your 2 cents in, it's going to hurt the other person. And if you're taking responsibility for your role in that, you say, do I really need to say this right now?
Or we, because sometimes conversations need to be especially in relationships, right? And sometimes the other person's not going to like what we hear, but I think it's really important that we take responsibility how we communicate that.
100%.
And that it comes from a place of love, not a place of, well, this is how I'm feeling, and I don't care how you feel when I share that with you. Because you're not my responsibility, which is true, but we are responsible. We are responsible for the words that we speak and how we speak them.
And we could take that a step further, and I do this to myself, which is why I'm saying it, is my ego. How you were saying before, the ego can trick you. It can put things in a way that you listen to, and my ego can do that similarly to what we're talking about here, where my intuition will come in, this thing will tell me, do this. This is where you need to go now. It's so left of field. It's so out of what I would think for myself. That my ego comes in and says, okay, maybe if we do it this way, maybe if we do it that way.
Pulls you back and keeps you small.
And then, but hang on a minute, this is not what the intuition was telling me to do. And then the ego will come in and say, oh, but maybe the intuition is telling you to do it this way so that you will go down a road of unpacking it, or, maybe this is giving you the challenge so that you figure out how to do it in your way. And I start to make up stories and excuses
Stories.
and create an environment where I can digest it better for the ego.
Yeah.
When the spirit is clear. The spirit is clear.
Yeah.
This is.
Do you know how much energy goes into making those stories up?
I
Because
know.
our bodies feel them as true. And like Katie
And
Byron's like the first thing.
myself.
Absolutely. The first thing Katie Byron says is that true? Or Byron Katie. I always say get her name. Katie is like the last name. Is that true? And part of us sometimes goes, yes, that's true. That's what's going to happen. Okay, give me proof. Give me proof. There's no proof. There's no proof. You cannot, like, it's a story of the future. It hasn't happened. A million scenarios could actually happen.
Yeah.
Oh,
and the second you can't get proof, it's like, okay, it's not true.
Sorry, I'm sorry. I'm
right?
just glad that we're having this conversation.
Yeah.
If I say that to Mum, I love you, Mummy. But I say, like, when she gets in story mode in her head, I'm like, but you do know that's true? And she's like, yes. I know it's true.
You catch me. See, this is the thing. Yeah. Juliet catches me in that moment.
Yeah.
She's catching me in the moment when it's happening.
In that moment.
You're in the emotional trigger. You're in the emotional trigger.
Like, yeah, and it's difficult in the moment when I'm feeling the feelings.
Yeah.
To hear the reasonable.
Yeah, but the ego's creating that story to keep you in that moment. So, you know, you do get to, and I'm all about not spiritually bypassing emotion, but being stuck in stories, your ego bypassing what is true and like creating emotion that isn't really there, right?
Yes.
So actually taking a breath next time Juliet says, is that true? Before you answer yes, say yes, it feels true. Juliet, you say, give me proof it's true. And you take another breath. And if you can't give her proof, then like take a breath and go and shake it. Like just shake it, jump up and like shake it out. Right?
Yeah.
Come back to the present moment. Today, what can I see? And you can just do this. What do I see? 5 things I see, 4 things I hear, 3 things that I can touch, 2 things I can smell, 1 thing I can taste. Again, 5 senses brings you back into the present moment. When you've got all 5 senses on board, you're in the present moment.
Yeah.
5 senses. Like
when I'm in it, when I'm in the story, and I can.
But that's creating that anxiety.
Yes.
Because anxiety comes from throwing stories that are not true into the future, hypotheses.
Yes.
And depression comes from reflecting and getting stuck in the past.
Yes.
Trying to see different scenarios to change what has already happened, which will never ever change because it's already happened.
Exactly it. You've just hit the nail on the head. That's exactly what's happening. I am predicting the future based on the past, a future that hasn't happened, and I'm predicting it based on the things that have happened in the past through families, friends, what I've witnessed, through things that I've experienced. And so I'm going to be recreating the past in the future if I continue to do that.
Yeah.
What's happening now is the spirit, the intuition that I'm getting is trying to break me out of that pattern.
Yeah.
And by doing something that's completely not something I would do, and I'm fighting it with all my, might and with everything that I've learned, because it's breaking me into a future that I know nothing about. Making me do something I don't understand.
So when I teach people about, the biggest thing that I teach, and actually this is in all my programs, it's like absolute key to life as well, is learning how to have a healthy relationship with our egoic mind. Yeah. Because often we're like, shut the fuck up, like get away. And then people are like, just quieten the ego, like push it away. Yeah. Anything pushed away goes to shadow.
Yeah.
Right? Which potentially is why your ego is so loud, because you're like, you've gone through a stage of like push, and it's going, right, getting bigger and scarier. I bet the stories are getting more intense as well.
Yeah. 100%. Yeah.
So rather than fight it, listen to it from it. Like the second you hear that fear come up, I literally drop my conscious mind into my heart space. I take a breath. I close my eyes, and I think we've spoken about this before, my ego is like this parrot on my shoulder. So doing that has allowed me to actually compartmentalize my egoic mind, because I used to be very much in my head, and I can now, I'm living more in the present, way more in the present moment than I ever have. My nervous system is like really regulated because I've been able to do this. So when I hear my ego come up, and when I teach people how to read, like do psychic readings and read oracle cards and tap into their intuition, just journal for themselves, the first thing that comes up is, you're making this up. Or if we're doing readings, they're going to think you're fucking crazy. Like, they're going to know you're making this up, right? First thing I tell them is, first of all, spirit intuition accesses your memories and your experiences. So it's going to feel like you're making it up anyway, right? Because it needs to speak to you in a way that you understand. So if you feel like you're making it up, you're doing a good job, first and foremost, right? Because it does access your imagination, right? Yep. So yep. I close my eyes. I imagine looking at my little parrot over here. I'm like, you know what? I see you, I hear you, and I love you. And I can see how you feel like we're making this up. It does seem that way. But what if we're not? What if this is something magical, right? Or it's like, I totally get why they think we're crazy, because sometimes I think that too. But let's just keep going anyway. You stay here. I got you, right? I am the boss of this vessel. I make the final choice. So I keep setting this as like a boundary. It's like, I will decide how we move forward. You can be here for the ride. I totally got you. I love you. You can keep speaking, but I make the final decision on where we go, right? And the more I do that, the quieter it gets. So if I'm doing a reading, I'm just going to use reading because this is really common in my readings. Sometimes people sit there like this. They come to my readings, they're like, I am not going to give anything for 45 minutes. I'm not going to twitch my eyes. I don't want to give anything away. And they do this. They don't even nod their head. 45 minutes.
Oh, God.
And my mind is going, fuck, this is not landing. This is not landing. It's like ego. This is not landing. You're making this up. They're going to know. They're going to know. They think you're wrong. They're going to hang up in a minute. They're just going to go tell their friends that you're shit. And I get to the end of 45 minutes and I've had my little conversation. Like, I see you. I love you. Like, let's just do this anyway. 45 minutes is a long time to be listening to that, right?
Yeah.
And then at the end, they go like, we finish, and they go, oh my God, how did you know all of that stuff? And they start rattling off all this stuff that's going on in their life, all the decisions they've got to make, all the stuff that's coming up. They're like, oh my God, that was so spot on, right? And I'm like, we do that. And then I go back to the ego. I'm like, see, I told you we weren't making it up. And just reassuring, like it's this reassuring validation process for the ego. So like coming from that place of loving awareness is really important, because we all want to be loved, and the ego is actually part of who you are. So you're actually relating to a part of yourself. Don't speak to the ego like it's this horrible, nasty thing, because when you speak to anything, like if you've done the plant and the water experiment before, when you speak hate to the rice, have you done that? Yeah. It goes black. Right? The ego is the same. It's a part of you, right? It's like our higher self. Like whenever I teach people to journal, it's like every time you connect to your higher self. Like when I journal, even if I'm just journaling, connecting to source or spirit guides or whatever I'm connecting to, the first thing I do is I ask to be connected to my higher self. I take a breath. I share a moment of like us. Sometimes it's a split second, but I just have this, like, the more I do this, the more love I feel for this part of me, this high vibrating part of me. And it's like, I love you. Like, I've just got so much respect and gratitude for you. Thank you. I appreciate you. And then I ask for my higher self to raise my vibration. I feel that. And then I ask my higher self to connect me to source energy, to the slipstream of all consciousness, to my spirit guides, to whatever it is I'm connecting to. And I speak to there, right? But what we're actually doing is like, this is the and I trust this like implicitly because this has been my experience, and this is the place that I teach from as well, from my experience. I've been doing this. When did we do our retreat with Kristy?
I think it was
2015 or 16. Yeah, it was around that time.
Around there.
So what's that? 8 years?
No,
it was
wasn't.
just
It was
16.
2016 was 8 years ago. Oh, that makes me feel weird. Sorry, continue.
Yes, 2000. Well, then nearly 9 years if it was 2015.
Yeah.
I went into this crystal shop and this lady told me that, like, because I was like, how do I connect to my guides? And she told me, right? And what I've noticed is the more and I notice this more so from taking people through my program and relating that back to my experience, because I experienced the same thing as all these other people have. When we work direct with Source, we have this ripple effect in our life, right? But one thing I know for sure is that every single time I connect to my higher self, I share unconditional love. And I've never loved myself so much in my life, and I haven't actively worked on it, right? So if I'm connecting daily and telling myself, actually several times a day, sometimes I do 6, 7, 8 readings a day, right? I'm literally telling that part of myself, sharing this immense amount of love. Like, it has trained me to love myself. I don't not like myself anymore. Like, my relationship with myself is really healthy, just like it is with my ego, right? So when we trust these pieces of ourselves and we start to love these pieces of ourselves, I think love and trust go hand in hand, right? Yeah. We actually create a deeper relationship and connection with ourselves. And when we have that, we start to have better connections and relationships in our outside world. We start to trust. When we trust ourselves more, when we trust spirit more, we trust ourselves more.
Yeah.
And when we trust ourselves more, we start to see and trust the outside world more. So the bullies come in, it's like, yeah, I see you, but I trust that I've got this, right? And you know what? Hurt people. And when you see that, you start having compassion, like not for their behaviors, but you have compassion for where that comes from. That's been my experience. But it took me a bit of a journey to get to this deep level of trust within myself to get to that point.
Yeah. So relationship to spirit was where it started for you.
Yeah. So go straight to Source.
Yeah.
That's like, even when I teach people boundaries with spirit, like, you know, spirit doesn't go against your free will. It's just, we've talked about this in other, I think, calls before. When we set that intention, we're just giving the energy parameters to work within. We're telling the energy how we want it to interact with us. Just like when we set boundaries in life, we're telling people how to interact and not interact with us, right? But instead of working directly here, when we do that with spirit, it naturally starts happening here, because spirit teaches us it actually teaches us what it's like to have our boundaries respected. And when we start to trust that when we set a boundary, it will either be respected or we get to choose how we react and respond to that, right? It's like, about this, do I just need to firm up that boundary a bit? Or do I need to remove myself? Because I can't remove them. I'm not responsible for them, right? We have 3 things where we can control: our words, our thoughts, and our actions or reactions, right? Yeah. Actions and reactions are one. So that's like, I can't control that shitty behavior, but I get to choose how I react and respond to that.
Yeah.
And sometimes, especially if it's family, we you know, with friends, we can remove ourselves, but with family, sometimes we can't, but we get to choose our proximity.
Yeah.
How much time am I going to spend with this person?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And just trust.
What a big thing to end it on, actually.
Yeah, but it was perfectly said and perfectly timed in the conversation, because it brought us right back to the beginning, which was the topic of today.
Yeah, it's all about trust.
Trusting spirit.
And
trusting
everything
ourselves.
else in between leads to that deep level of trust. Yeah. Everything.
Oh, thank you.
Yay!
Thank you, everyone, for listening.
Yeah.
Thank you, Kristy.
You're so very welcome. I love coming on here and having these chats.
Yes.
What a
Yay.
big conversation.
Yes.
I feel like when we are in these conversations with people on Witch Bitch that we're in a bubble of beauty.
Yeah.
We
It
are
is.
in a bubble.
It's beautiful.
Yeah, that's how I feel. And I'm so glad that we created this show.
Yeah.
And we get to
great.
talk to people like you.
I know. It's amazing. It's amazing.
Yes.
I love all the conversation you guys have on here. It's brilliant.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Okay.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you for your time.
Bye, everyone.